everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We rise page 103 for Birchot HaShachar. Blessings in the morning.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan nesach v'bina להבחין בין יום ובין לילה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בצלמו.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בת חורי.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני ישראל.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם פוקח עברי.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מלביש האומים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם מתיר אסורים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם זוקף כפופים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם רוקע ארץ המים.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המכין מצעדי גבר.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה לי קוצור כי.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוזי סל בגבורה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הוצאת ישראל בתפארה.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הנותן לאהב כוח.
אמן.
122.
ברוך שאמר והיה עולם ברוך הוא.
עושה בראשית, ברוך הוא עושה, ברוך הוא זה מקיים בבשרתו, ברוך הוא נכונה, יחיד חלמים.
יחיד חלמים מלך משובח ומפורט את שמו הגדול. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מעולל ותשבחו.
Amen. You may be seated.
So Shabbat Shalom, friends. The parasha for this week is Beha'alotcha. There are many really interesting aspects of this parsha, but one of them is that the people are asking Moshe why it is that if they cannot offer that if they have come into contact with a dead body, that they're not able to offer the Pesach sacrifice, the Passover sacrifice, the Korban Pesach. And the question is raised, how could this be? I mean, first of all, the Korban Pesach is incumbent upon everyone. And second of all, it's a reminder that all of us left Egypt. So how could it be that some people would be excluded from this ritual? And Moshe is a beautiful leadership moment where essentially Moshe says, I don't know. And he says, Imdu ve'eshma'a, which means come stand by me, and I'll wait to hear, or I'll wait to understand. And so I want to offer that. It's a beautiful statement, I think, of humility from a leader, but really part of what tefillah is this sensibility that we can imdu v'eshma'a, that we can kind of come together and stand by, all of us with our own questions, our own struggles, our own curiosity, our own trying to just behold the mystery of this life, that we can come stand by, imdu v'eshma'a, to wait and listen deeply. So I invite us to stand by together, not only in our tefillah, but beyond, and really listen carefully. So we're going to continue with Psukei de Zimra as we warm up our souls and just land here. As before we delve into Shacharit this morning, we're going to start in the little booklets that are in front of us with number 4, Shiviti. Shiviti is this beautiful invitation from Psalms that we remember to keep God, in particular this aspect of God, this Yud He Vav He aspect of God, which is symbolic of compassion and love before us at all times. Shiviti Havaya Lenedi Tamid. Shiviti Havaya Lenedi Tamid. Havaya, 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 Ahava, 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 Havaya, 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 Ahava, Ahava, Ahava. I'm praying for compassion to lead me at all times. I'm praying for compassion to lead me at all times. Havaya, 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 Ava, 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 Havaya, 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 Ava, Ava, Ava. Number 9, Tov lehodot. It is good to give thanks in the morning, in the evening, for God's emunatcha, God's faithfulness of just standing by us, of our own capacity to stand by, even with all of life's uncertainties. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Olezamer l'shimcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Olezamer b'boker Number 14, Libi Er. These words from Shira Shirim, from Song of Songs, invite us to open our hearts, to awaken, to hear the knock at the door of our beloved, of God, of love, of wisdom, calling us to open our eyes to see more clearly. Ani yeshena v'libi er, kododi dofek b'tzili. Ani yeshena v'libi er, kododi dofek b'tzili. Ahoti rayati yanati tamati jeroshi nimnata kemutotarasi laila. Ahoti rayati yanati tamati jeroshi nimnata kemutotarasi laila. Yeshena v'libi er, kododi dofek b'tzili. Ani yeshena v'libi er, kododi dofek b'tzili. Number 17, Oziva Zimratia. Rabbi Shefa Gold has a beautiful interpretation of this line, which comes from both Psalms and from the book of Exodus, that it is really Ozi, my strength, the strength that belongs to each one of us, and Zimratia, the song of God, that will bring each one of us our own salvation, our own redemption, our own saving. And so part of this tefillah, this prayer, is inviting us to figure out the balance. Is it the moment for me to step up in my own life, to put forth greater effort towards my own redemption and the redemption of the world? Or is it the moment in which I can make space for God to enter and to help lift and create movement towards goodness and freedom for all? So, Oziva Zimratia, my strength and God's song. Oziva Zimratia. Neshima Mukha, we take a deep breath. As we prepare for Nishmat Kol Chai, the soul breath of each one of us is its own prayer to God.
Bottom 146.
Mi melach u'mi shelach u'mi yarok la Ha'el hagadol hagibor hanora El elyon Kol shamayim va'aretz Na'ale lecha neshabechecha nfa'elecha nvarech et shem kodshecha kamur LeDavid b'archinu Shilai V'chok ravai et shem kodsho בצעצמות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגימור הנצח והנורא בנורותיך, המלך היושב, הכיסא רם ונישא.
147.
בפי ישרים תתהרה
Hara,
להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, לברך, לקלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי,
Please rise, 148. לעד מלכנו, מלך הגדול הקדוש בשמיים. ברכות ומלטב ידנו.
ברכות והודות, מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני. גדול ותשבחות, על הודעות אדוני נפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך העולמים,
אמן.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
במה תברח חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ומלכון, ובחית כל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב ימרו,
אמן. ישרה ורע, לעולם ועמיה.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה, בריחו. מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמה וימרו, אמן.
Page 149, a slight bow of humility and love for the Baruch.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Maybe seated 150.
We begin with the first blessing before the Shema that invites us to honor and see the light and the darkness and all that is. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer borei hosheh oseh shalom uborei et hakol.
Baruch atah
Adonai Eloheinu
melech haolam yotzer borei hosheh oseh shalom uborei et hakol. הכל ידוך וכל ישמעוך ומכל קדוש אדוני ותברך יום דתות שם יזבח יום במקומם
אין כרך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה ואין זולתך מכינו לחיי עולם הבא. אפס ברתך גאולנו את המשיח
ויהי מלך משיחנו
לתחיית המתים.
151
אל אדון עד כל המעשים ארוך ומבורך לפי כל נשמה ולא בטובו לעולם דודו נעזוב במותו המתגאה על החיות הקודש ונדר בכבוד על המרכבה זכות ומישור מפני חיסון חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם ודעת ובינה ובשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות ראש ודרך תבל עם זיו ותמנוג נאה זיו לכל העולם שמחים וצייתים וששים ובואם עושים מהם הרצון גונם בכבוד נונים לשמות צלם ורינה לזכר מלכותו קרא לשם ויזרח אור רע בצורת אלמנה שבנונים לא צבא אהרון עיוורת וגדולה סרטים ויובנים וחיות הקודש לאל אשר שבה מכל המעשים
152 טוב תודות לאדוני לפיכך יפרעו Top 153
כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים אימה וביראה רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים אביהם בקדושה ותורה ושירה ובזמרה ומפרחים שערים ומפרים ומניצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הנשור וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה ובנעימה קדוש העולם העונים ואמרים ביראה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך הארץ כבודו והאופנים והחיות הקודש ורעש גדול מנסים לעומת צרפים לעומת המשבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו
ברוך נעמות לך וקיים זכר שמן וחומות
אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המלך
154 we bring our seat together to prepare for Shema Yisrael
קרבתנו לשמך הקדוש אלה באמת להודות לך ויחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני
ברוך שמו
הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
Page 156.
Adonai lechem emet, ויציב נחם וקיים ושמר. לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים, וכיסא נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. אמת שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו ואמותינו, גואלנו גואל אבותינו ואמותינו, יוצרנו תורשותנו, פותנו מצילנו מלם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך, עזרת אבותינו ואמותינו אותנו מעולם.
משפטיך אמן, אמן. Bottom 158.
תהילות לאל עליון ברוך ומבורך, משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך בנים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נוראתי לא תוספת שירה חדשה, שבחו גאולים לשמך שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחנו ממך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני קהל ישראל.
So we place our feet together towards the ark, towards Yerushalayim. 159 through 161, we daven together as a congregation, rest silently. Our parsha deals with the lighting of the menorah, lighting the lights that existed in the ancient temple or in our mikdash. And part of Shabbat davening is about relighting our own inner temple, making sure our inner temple does not burn out and die, keeping alive what's inside and getting in touch with what's inside, what's the fire in our life that God has gifted us with, the gift of fire that helps us to go out into the world with joy and with love and compassion. So a chance to not only daven the traditional prayers, but to touch into your inner fire or to enlighten your inner fire.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha 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 Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha Baruch atah אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, אלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו ויאהבה, מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, בחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. שמח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול מנזיר לעומת צרפים לעומתם ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומך מכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון ידי תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים לדור ודור ונצח נצחים ויהינו צידנה מלכותך ידי כדבר האמור בשירי יהודה על ידי דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מבילוי ושלום ועד כי על מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Shalom imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imenu amen.
167.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, ועמד דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ומכון, ובחי תכל בית ישראל, בגלה ושמקרי ואמרו אמן. יהי שמרה מברך, נהל המורל מהמיה יתברך, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו, נעלם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן דלמה ואמרו אמן. תתקבץ לו טון תוך ישראל, קדם אבהון דבשמיא ואמרו אמן. יהי שנה ברב מן שמיה, וחיים לנו בכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן. אין כמוך אלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אב הרחמים היטיבה בצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. ויהי מנשוא אהרון ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני ויפוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי בציון תורה, כי בציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים, ברוך שנתן תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני
Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Kadosh Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Adonai
Gadnu Adonai iti Unirobim Shemo Yachdav Leha Adonai Gedula V'Gevura V'Tiferet V'Netzach V'Hod Ki Chov Hashamayim U'Va'aretz Ki Chov Hashamayim U'Va'aretz Lecha Adonai Hamamlacha Ve'amin Na'aseh Lechol Erosh Ramim Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachavu L'Adam Raglav Kadoshu Ramim Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachavu Le'or Kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Oseh Shalom Imrama Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'yavo Yisrael Ve'yako Yoshvei Tevel Ve'imru Amen. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
May be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are on Parshat Baha'alotacha. When you lift up. So in the beginning of the Parsha, with lifting up the candles, it goes on to a few other stories as well. So we're on page 826 in the larger red Chumashim. 826, chapter 10, verse 35. Page 826. We come for our first Aliyah. Ve'azor ve'gim v'shirasim bo v'namar amen hakol havu godel le'eloheinu utnu kavod laTorah yamdu. Shlomo ben Chaim Ezra Kohen V'Adasa V'Tova Bat Nehemiah V'Sar Lali Harishona Baruch Shetan To'alamo Yisrael B'Rishato V'atem Advikim B'Adonai Eloheichem Chaim Uhem Hayom
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvara.
Baruch Adonai V'Ra Le'olam V'ed
Baruch Adonai V'Rach Le'olam V'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bacha banu mikol ha'amin, v'notan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayehi bin Aharon vayomer Moshe kuma Adonai v'yafutzu hoivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha uvnucha yomar shuva Adonai rivavot alfei Yisrael vayehi ha'am kmiton et nimra v'yosnei Adonai vayishma Adonai vayichar hapo v'tivar b'hamesh Adonai v'tochal b'ktzei hamachaneh vayitz'akam el Moshe v'yitpalel Moshe el Adonai v'tishkahesh vayikra Hashem hamakom hahu tevera ki v'haravam Eish Adonai v'hasaf suf asher b'kirbo hitavu tahava v'yashuvu v'yivku gam b'nei Yisrael v'yomeru mi yachilenu basar zacharnu et hadagah asher nochal b'mitzrayim chinam et hakishuim v'et avatichim v'et hachatzir v'et habetzalim v'et hashumim ואתה נפשנו יבשה, אין כל בלתי, אל המן איננו, והמן כסרגת, ובנו כהן הבדולח, שתו העם בלקטו, ותחנו ברחיים, הודקו במדוכה, ובישלו בפרור ועשתה, וגות והיה תמו, כתם לשד השמן, ורדת הטל, על המחנה לילה ירד המן עליו.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam b'ata b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen. Shekoyach. Tover. Second Aliyah, verse 10, page 828. Yamod. Simcha Yaakov ben Tzvi lezer halevi Aliyah sheni. While he comes forward, invite all to please rise. We'll offer a prayer for healing. Adding in all those who are praying for need of healing, mind, body, and neshama, and soul. Misha berach avotenu, Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, v'imotenu Sarevka Rachel v'Leah, hu yivarech v'rapeh et hachonim. הקדוש ברוך הוא עם רחמים עליהם להחזיקם רפאותם וישלח להם רפואה שלמה מן שמיים פרטים ושפות הגוף בתוך שאר החולים חזק ידידי העוסקים בצורכיהם שבת תמצוא קרובה קרובה לבוא השתה בגלה בזמן קריב ונאמר Amen. May the Holy One who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bring blessing and healing to all those we pray for. May the Holy One mercifully restore them to health and vigor, granting them spiritual and physical well-being, together with all others who are ill. And may God grant strength to those who tend to them. The Shabbat is a time to refrain from crying out. We yet hope and pray that healing is at hand, and let us say together.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher baraka banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayishma Moshe et ha'am bochel mishpachotav ish lefetach ohalo vayichar ha'Adonai mehod u'veinei Moshe ra vayomer Moshe el Adonai lama harehota levavtecha v'lama lo matzati chen beinecha lasum et masa kol ha'am hazeh alayim Hanochi hariti et kol ha'am hazeh imanochi yilidtihu ki tomar elai sahehu v'chekecha kasher isahu mein et hayonei kol hadamah asher nishbata lavotav mehayin li basar latet lechol ha'am hazeh kivku alai lemor tenalanu basar v'nochela Lo hazeh ki chaved mimeni vim kacha atoseli orgeni naharog imatzati chen beinecha valere berahati Vayomer Adonai al Moshe Esvali shivim ish miziknei Yisrael Asher yadata ki hem ziknei ham v'shotrav v'lakachta otam el moed v'yatzvu sham himach V'yaradti v'divarti himecha sham v'atzalti min haruach asher alecha v'samti aleihem v'nasuhu idcha b'masam v'lo tisata levadecha v'elham tomar Yitkadeshu l'mahor v'chaltem basar ki lechitem be'oznei Adonai lemor mi yachil lenu basar ki tov lanu b'mitzrayim v'natan Adonai lachem basar v'chaltem
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei natan b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen. Shekach. Stewie. Our third Aliyah, verse 19, page 830. We have a third Aliyah. Thank you. Besh Tamud. Malka bat Gershon v'Leah Leah Shlishit. Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bechar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Lo yom echad tochelun velo yomayim velo chamisha yamim velo asara yamim velo esrim yom ad chodesh yamim ad asher yetzei me'apechem v'haya lachem lezara yan Ki me'astem et Adonai asher bekirбechem v'tivku lefanav lemor lama zeh yatzanu mimitzrayim vayomer Moshe sheish me'ot elef ragli ha'am asher anochi bekirbo ve'ata amarta basar eten lahem Ve'achelu chodesh yamim Hatzon uvakar Yishachet lahem umatzah lahem Im et kol degei hayam Ye'asef lahem umatzah
lahem.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Shekach. Kol hakavod. Beautifully done. Our fourth Aliyah, verse 23, page 830. Where do we? Yamdu. Men Ruvain ben Shmuel v'Gittel. The Shirabat Binyamin v'Sara Aliyah Revi'it. Oh, that's right.
They just what number? 6. Oh my gosh, thank God. I know, it's crazy. I mean, it's like yesterday.
Baruch
Baruchu et Adonai Hamarach.
Baruch Hanemarach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Barak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Adonai Hamarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bakar banu mikol hamim. V'natan lanu et Torto. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Is this good?
Amen. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Hayad Adonai Tiksar Ata Tireh Yikrecha Devarim Lo Vayetze Moshe Vayedaber el Ha'am Et Divrei Adonai Vayesof Shivim ish miziknei Am Vayamed otam svivot ha'ohel Vayered Adonai be'anan Vayedaber elav vayotzel min haruach asher elav Vayitein al shivim ish hazikenim Vayehi Kinoach alehem haruach vayinabu v'lo yasafu vayisharu shnei anashim b'machane shem ha'echad eldad v'shem hasheni medad v'tanach Alehem haruach v'hema baktuvim v'lo yatzu ha'ohela v'yinabu b'machaneh v'yarot sanar v'yagei l'Moshe v'yomar eldad u'medad midnabim b'machaneh v'yad Yoshua bin Misharei Moshe Mibchorel Vayomar Adoni Moshe Kilaim Vayomer Lo Moshe Hamkane Atali Umitein Kolam Adonai Neviim Kitein Adonai Erucho Aleichem. Sorry. Way over there.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. B'hei olam notak b'kokenu. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shakach, we're going to take a moment here to honor a special anniversary for the Goldwasser's.
Right. Well,
63.
everyone is special. Actually, 63 years ago, I had the #1 pick.
In the draft.
In the draft.
Just
And I picked Shirley.
Good pick.
I mean,
Good pick.
wasn't
She
that-
lasted
Yeah,
long. She
that's
could run the
right.
point. She had no interest in doing.
She made it.
We are so happy for you all. It's very appropriate. In a reading we just testified before, if you saw, Moses was so frustrated. He said, I don't know, can I handle this people? How am I going to drag it up? And God says, basically, chill out, relax, Moshe. We're going to get 70 elders who are going to help you on this journey. And that could not be a better metaphor for life, right? Is that married life is about saying that you are both very capable people with such strength. And all the times I've seen you, even in these years, you have such strength. But you all know that living the life with its ups and downs and challenges is done best with a teammate. And you got that teammate together. You've done it together. You've worked together. You support the Jewish community together. Justice throughout the city and our state together. May it only continue in health and joy and lots of love. We send to you Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov. Elanu, 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 Ore Israel, Elanu, Elanu, Ore Israel, Elanu, Elanu, lanu yelanu Olecho Yisrael. Shakach. Go take your first pick on the other side, all right? Okay, tough. We now continue the fifth Aliyah, verse 30, page 832. Back from Tehas, Tamod, Gabriel Sheva Bas, Avram Sarah Aliyah, HaChamishit.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayasef Moshe el hamachaneh hu v'ziknei Yisrael v'ruach nasa me'et Adonai vayagaz salvim min hayam vayitosh el hamachaneh kaderech yom ko Uchderech yom ko sivivot hamachaneh uchamatayim el pnei haaretz vayakam ham kol hayom hahu v'chol halayla v'chol yom hamacharat Vaisfu et haslav hamamamit asaf asre asara hamaarim vaishtichu lahem shatoach sivivot hamachaneh Habasar otanu bein shinehem terem yikaret ve'af Adonai chara ba'am ve'yach Adonai ba'am makara ba'me'od vayikra et shem hamakom hahu kivrot hata'ava Ki sham kavru et ha'am hamitavim mikverot hata'ava nasu ha'am chatzerot vayehu
Ba'atzerot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. It's so good to see you, Addison. Our sixth Aliyah, verse 1, page 833. Yamod Mordechai Dav ben Raphael u'Malka. Aliyah Shishi.
Baruch hu es Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Barah le'olam
Baruch
va'ed.
Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ato Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bocha bonu mikol hamim v'nosan lanu es Toraso. Baruch ato Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'tidaber Miriam v'Aharon b'Moshe al odot ha'isha hakushit asher lakach ki shachushit lakach v'yamru harakach b'Moshe diber Adonai halo gam banu diber v'yishma Adonai v'ha'ish Moshe anav me'ot mikol hadam asher al pnei adama. Vayomer Adonai pidom el Moshe v'el Aaron v'el Miriam tzeu shloshtchem el ohel moed vayetzu shloshtam. Vayered Adonai b'amud anan vayamo petach ha'ohel vayikra Aaron u'Miriam vayetzu shnehem vayomer shimuna devarai im yeh nevi'achem Adonai b'marai la'avevada b'chalom adaber bo lochein adi Moshe b'chol beiti nemanhu peh adaber bo umarev lo v'chidot utmunat Adonai abit umadua lo yiretem ledaber b'yavdi v'Moshe vayichar af Adonai bam vayela vayichar af Adonai bam vayelach v'hanan sar me'al ha'ohel v'nei Miriam mitzarat kashaleg vayifen Aharon el Miriam v'nei mitzarat vayomer Aharon el Moshe bihi Adoni al na tasher aleinu chatat asher no'alnu v'asher chatanu al na tehi kamed asher b'tzeito merechem imohu vayecher chatzi v'sarohu vayitzahak Moshe el Adonai lemor el na refana.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bocha amonu mikol ha'amim v'notan lanu es Torato. Baruch atah Adonai nosein haTorah.
Amen. Shkoyach. So our 7th Aliyah, verse 14, page 835. Yamot Reuven leben Nachman v'Chana Aliyah Shvi'it.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe v'yaviha yarok befaneha halo tikalem shivat yamim tisager shivat yamim michutz machane v'yacharte aseif v'tisager Miriam michutz machane shivat yamim v'ha'am lo nasa ad ha'aseif Miriam v'achar nasu ha'am mechatzerot v'yachanu b'midbar
Barbara.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. Shkoch. You rise. Yitgadal ve'yitgadash merabah.
Amen.
Yamadi v'cheruteh v'amnich malchuteh ve'ayeon. Ov yomechon uchayei le'ovet Yisrael. V'gala u'v'yismach gori v'miru. Amen. Yesh merab ha'mevorach. יתברך, ישתבח, יתפאר יתרמני, ותנשא, ויתעדה, ויתעלה, ויתעלל, Shmer Godesha. Delavin
Berichu.
kol brachata v'shirata.
Tushbechata v'nechem rata damiran me'alma.
Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. We now call up our Maftirah Aliyah, verse 14, page 835. Tamod. Chaya Sara bat Sviva Fegel ala Maftirah.
Baruch et Adonai Habarach.
Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch et Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe V'yavi hayarok yarok b'fanecha Halo tikalim shivat yamim tisager Shivat yamim mechutz ha'machaneh V'yacharti ha'seif tisager Miriam Mechutz ha'machaneh shivat yamim V'ha'am lo nasah Ad ha'seif Miriam v'yachar natzuham mechatzerot v'yachanu b'midbar
Paran.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Please rise. Yamod. Yisrael Yahu ben Chaim v'Tzipora Magbia Tamod. Shorna Leah bat Moshe Micha v'Shoshana Golelet.
Vezot ha'Torah asher zam Moshe livnei bnei Yisrael avi Adonai v'yad Moshe yad Adonai yad Adonai yad
Page 837 for the Haftarah of the Parsha Haftarah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'vim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hanemarim b'emet Baruch atah Adonai havacher b'torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'im b'yei ha'emet v'tzedek Rani v'simchi batzion, ki hineni va, v'shachanti v'tochech num Adonai, v'nilvu goyim rabim el Adonai, bayom hahu, v'hayu li le'am, v'shachanti v'tochech v'yadat ki Adonai tzivot shelachani elayich v'nachal Adonai yudach elko al admat hakodesh uvachar od b'Yerushalayim haskol basar mipnei Adonai Hine ormim od kodsho vayareni et Yoshua hakohen hagadol omed lifnei malach Adonai hasbi hasatan omed al yemino lisidno Vayomer Adonai El Hasatan Yigar Adonai Becha Hasatan V'yigar Adonai Becha Habocher b'Yerushalayim Halo Zeh Udmutzameyesh V'Yehoshua haya lavush begadim tzoim v'omei lifnei hamalach v'ayan v'yomer el hamdim lefanav lemor hasiru abegadim hatzoim me'alav Vayomer elav Rei avarti me'alecha vonecha ve'al behishodcha machat latzod Omar yasimu tzaniv tahor al rosho vayasimu hatzaniv hatahor al rosho Vayalbishuhu begadim umalach Adonai omeid Vayad malach Adonai bihoshua lemor Ko amor Adonai tzvaot im bidrachai telech v'im et mishmarti tishmor v'gam atah tadim et beiti v'gam tishmor et chatzerai v'natati lecha malchim ben hamdim ha'ele shmana Yehoshua HaKohen HaGadol Ata v'recha hayoshvim lefanecha ki anshe mofet hema ki hineni mevi et avdi tzemach ki hine ha'even asher Natati lifnei Yehoshua alevet achad shiva einayim hineni mefateach pitucha neum Adonai tzvaot umashti et avod ha'aretzahi b'yom echad Bayom hahu neum Adonai tzvaot tikru Ishel re'ehu el tachat gefet v'el tachat tena. Vayashov hamalach hadover bi vayireni keish asher ye'or mishnato vayomer elai ma'ata roeh Valmar Ra'iti Vehine min arad Sahav kula V'gula rosha Vishiva neroteha leha Vishiva mutzakot Lanerot asher rosha Ushnayim zetim aleha Echad mimin hagula V'echad asmalaha Va'ahad v'omar El hamalach hadaver bi lemor Mo'ele Adoni Vayan hamalach hadover bi vayomer elai halo yodata mahela v'omar lo Adoni Vayan vayomer elai lemor Zed var Adonai el Zerubbabel lemor lo v'chayu v'lo v'choach ki imbruchi amar Adonai tzivot mi'ata har hagadol lifnei Zerubbabel lemishor v'hotzi et ha'even harosha teshuot chen la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zur kol olamim tzadik b'chol hadorot hayel haneheman homer v'yosem daber kayim shekol divarav emevat tzedek neman atah Adonai Eloheinu v'nemanim divarecha v'davarecha mivarecha chor lo yashurekam Ki el melech nemar rachamanata Baruch atah Adonai Hayaneman bechol divarav
Amen.
Rachim al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu V'lalu v'nefesh Shia b'meira v'yameinu Baruch atah Adonai
Oshemu.
V'samei Tzion b'fanecha
Amen.
Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu Hanavi Avdecha U'malchut Beit David Mishichecha B'mehera Yavov Yagel Libeinu Al Kiso Lo Yeshev Zar V'lo Yichalu Od Achirim Et Kivodo Kiv Shem Kodechecha Nishbata Lo Shelo Yichbene Ra Le'olam Va'ed Baruch atah Adonai
Oshemo.
Elohim David Al
Amen.
HaTorah V'al Havodah V'hanavim V'yom HaShabbat Hazeh Shenatata Lahanu Adonai Eloheinu L'kedusha v'limnucha V'chavod u'tifaret Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu modim lach Mevarchim otach Yibarach Shemcha Lefi Kol Chai Tamid Le'olam Va'ed Baruch atah Adonai
Oshemo.
Kadesh HaShabbat
Amen. Shekoyach, Linda. Reading, Torah reading, learning, and Haftarah. We rise to the Chevre to return the Sefer Torah to the Ark, page 183. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki nizgav shemo levado, Hodo aleret shamayim, vayarem kerem le'amo, tila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael avirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Mizmor David, Habul Adonai b'neim, Habul Adonai gavos, Habul Adonai kivod shemo, Hishtachavul Adonai be'adrat kodesh. Adonai Amayim el kavod irim, Adonai Amayim rabbi. Kol Adonai ba'koha, Kol Adonai be'hadar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishover Adonai et arzei halvanon. Merkerim kamo vegel, levanon v'siriyo kimo v'reimim. Kol Adonai chotzev havotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yachol el hayadot. Vaychesov yerod v'chalok lo merkavod, Adonai namabul yashav, Hayeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai oz ve'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, Etz chaim hi למחזיקים בה בתוכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכי נאור לכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש ימינו חדש ימינו Maybe see everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Great to see everyone, new faces and old. Glad to have you here on the Shabbos of the summer. So we are reading a little bit of a longer Talmudic story. And actually, I decided, rabbinic fiat, that this summer, since I'm actually going to be here, me and Rabbi Jenny, for nearly every Shabbat this summer, to use this opportunity this summer to move away from the Parsha each week and instead bring 6 or 7 of my favorite, top 10 passages from the Talmud. Because I feel like sometimes we don't study Talmud enough here. We get into it kind of by the way, maybe through a commentary of the Parsha. Let's go deep in and get some messages from the Talmud of what make these texts so rich and so amazing. And one of these I taught a little bit on Shavuot, but I could tell it was such a fired up discussion. I said, you know what, let's bring the whole Megillah. Let's bring this whole section from the Talmud about this great story of what's called the deposing, the removal of Rabban Gamliel. Now, I want to remind you, when you're reading a Talmudic story or version, the wording tends to be terse and tends to assume a lot of knowledge and language that even the rabbis later on don't always understand, and that's why you need that famous rabbi in the corner of the Talmud who explains things. Who knows this? It's Rashi. Rashi often explains in the corner, saying, I know you don't understand it, but let me explain to you why. Because the rabbis, the Talmud is a discussion happening over generations from about the year 0 to the year 500, and a lot of conversations are going on. It's been edited, but the ones who are studying it at that time or having the conversations, they kind of had some understood cultural knowledge of what was going on there that is lost, not just today, but lost over the course of 1,500 years. So we have to fill it in. So I just want to remind you that when we read it, we got to kind of read it slowly. And you might think, I don't get what's going on here, but luckily you have rabbis here to help you. Okay, guide through the story. Now, we're going to go through the story and get some understanding, but what ultimately we're hoping to pull out of this, and this might actually take 2 Shabbatot. I don't know if we get it all done today, because it's such a rich story. In fact, I had at the Hartman Center and other places I've studied, some people are asked, what's your number one favorite passage from the Talmud? And this one consistently comes up as the number one story, because it's so rich. There's so much going on in it. So, but therefore, we have to kind of limit conversation if I can focus it. But the main goal first is just to understand it. What is it saying and what is going on here? Basically, whoa, and so if you're confused, I have Rahmanis, don't worry. There are a lot of lessons about this on the internet. You can follow up, and I'll try and guide as much as possible. All right, let's go to the background. In ancient Israel, really not ancient, but in rabbinic Israel, right? We have the temple in Jerusalem. The temple is destroyed by the Romans. And what time of, what's the date? 70. Okay, this has caused tremendous tensions within our people. How do we keep Judaism going if the temple is destroyed and the Romans have dominated our land and we are in exile? It wasn't our first exile, but it was our main exile, the one that we think of most prominently, second temple exile. There's a small group of rabbis led by Yochanan ben Zakkai in another famous story who sneak him out of the old city as it's being destroyed. And in the end, they think this is the end of Judaism. Our temple's destroyed. Our God is losing to the Roman God. Our country's dominated. We have no more sovereignty. Our culture's gone. We're kaputski. But this small group says, you know what? Give me Yavne and its sages. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, you know what? You can have Jerusalem. You can destroy it all, destroy the temple. He's not happy about it, but he says you can do it. Just give us a small town on the coast of Israel, kind of north of Tel Aviv, south of Haifa. We can just have, and some of the sages, and let us try to keep Judaism going. I don't know how we're going to do it, by the way, because there's no more sacrifices, and we can't practice Jerusalem anymore, and we don't have cultural, we're totally dominated. But let us go, and the agreement is made with the emperor, I think it's Nero, it says, okay, you can take that famous thing. And by the way, that's a famous story where if you go to Rome, and there's the Arch of Titus, and there's a picture of menorah. Have you been to Rome and seen that? Because the Romans they plundered treasure from our temple, including the menorah, that's according to the story, and took it back to Rome, and it's lost forever. That was the end. It was seen as this was the end. But in this time, in Yavne, we started again with a lot of creativity. That's a whole lecture, and I won't say that for now. But it moves on. We established and we continue to have what's called the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin, who remembers what that is? What's the Sanhedrin? The court. So there was the big Sanhedrin and there was smaller Sanhedrin. But the big Sanhedrin was kind of like the Supreme Court of the Jewish people. Had 72, I believe 72 or 70, I remember, 70 or 72 rabbis who would sit around and they would adjudicate all the major decisions for the land. So instead of being in Jerusalem where it's normally taking place, it goes to Yavne. And it begins actually moving throughout the north of Israel because for those of you that know a little of ancient history in the land of Israel, 70 was the big major loss, but there was another big one in 135 called the Bar Kokhba revolt. So it didn't all really stop, and it kept going on. There was a lot of still kind of fighting and skirmishes. And so therefore the Jewish community kept fleeing farther and farther north to northern Israel. Places like Sipori, for those who have been there, it's called Siphoris? Sipori. How do you say it? Sepharia? I forget how to say it in English. Sipori. And the Sanhedrin would move in different places. Okay. But the head of the big Sanhedrin around this time, after the temple was destroyed, one of the key leaders, his name is Rabban Gamliel. Not just Rabbi Gamliel, but Rabban, almost like our rabbi, because he was seen as powerful amongst all the rabbis, and he's like the king of the court. And you can understand, one of the things he's stressed about, so scholars will tell you, is that after the destruction, after many have been killed, including rabbis, and after all there's different religious communities, this is like the birth of Christianity, if some of you know that, right around that time. There's a lot of religious flourishing going on in that time that's causing a lot of political and angst and what's going to continue. So he wants to strongly emphasize unity, and bringing the Jewish people together after this devastation, and how can we come together, be unified and centralized, and focus on keeping our people together. If we keep having Judaism X over here, or Judaism Y over this part of the continent, or Judaism becoming Christianity over here, we need to focus on being together and being kind of consolidated and getting everybody on the same team. And it's not necessarily done because he's a ruthless tyrant. It's done also because he believes this is how we're going to keep Judaism going. We have to get clear and focused on our future. Okay. All of that is background. This is the story of how Rabban Gamliel, who was a strong, respected leader, his students basically one day say, it's time for Rabban Gamliel to go down. So the question is, why? How? How did it happen? How does Rabban Gamliel take it? And that's this story here. It is so rich. Okay, so we have Randy, Randy's the magic microphone. She's going to walk around and find some readers who are going to speak nice and loudly to read this paragraph. After each paragraph, I'm going to ask for a pause to make sure we're clear on what's happened so far. We're going to focus just on clarity, and then at the very end when we're done, we'll get more into the depths of what is the underlying messages of this story. Okay, who would like to read out loud? Just one paragraph first. At the top, it happened that a student. You're going to hear in the story other famous rabbis from the Talmud who were very highly respected, but they're underneath Rabban Gamliel. They are beneath him in power. All right, Risa, nice and loud.
Deposing Rabban Gamliel. Gamliel?
Yep, Gamliel.
It happened that a student approached Rabbi Yehoshua and said, the evening prayer, Ma'ariv, is it voluntary or obligatory?
All right, stop right there. This is based on an old Talmudic discussion. Anyone familiar with this discussion? This is from the first few pages of Brachot. There's a discussion. Why do we daven 3 times a day? We traditionally daven Shacharit, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. They are supposed to be based upon how are they created by the rabbis after the temple is destroyed. They said every morning, according to the book of Leviticus, we bring 1 sacrifice in the morning, and we give 1 sacrifice in the afternoon. In the evening, we don't give a sacrifice because it's dark, but we take over the leftover embers, there are fires, and things, and we actually clean it up and take things up. So the rabbis discussed, so since we can no longer give a sacrifice to the temple, instead we will give our prayer. Our prayer will be the place of sacrifices. That, hopefully, some of you have heard it before. So we'll do a morning sacrifice, that's called Shacharit. We'll do an afternoon sacrifice, that's called Mincha. We'll do an extra sacrifice on Shabbat. What will that be called? Musaf. That's why we have a Musaf prayer. He said, what about night? There was no required sacrifice at night. All there was cleaning up the leftovers. So there's a debate. Are you required to give a prayer at night because it's nighttime and we did some work at the temple at night? Or is it not really required because it wasn't really a sacrifice at night? It's like a debate on how much did the temple practice affect the new Judaism being developed. Look at the answer.
Rabbi Yehoshua said to the student, voluntary. The student then went and approached Rabban Gamaliel.
Right. It's like if people doesn't get the answer he likes, he goes to a different rabbi, okay?
President of the Sanhedrin in Yavne after the destruction of the temple, a firm believer in unifying rabbinic leadership and centralizing power, and said, the evening prayer, is it voluntary or obligatory? Rabban Gamliel said, obligatory. Mm-hmm. The student then said to Rabban Gamliel, but didn't Rabbi Yehoshua say to me voluntary? Rabban Gamliel said, wait until the scholars enter the study hall, and it will be decided then.
Dun, 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 dun. Do you follow what's happening here? Any questions or confusion? Don't be embarrassed, right? Rabbi Yehoshua is not chopped liver, okay? He says voluntary. Don't have to say the evening prayer. It's not there's no sacrifice. God says, no, it's required. And he wants everyone to be on his page. He doesn't say, he says, let's wait till all the 70 come together, and we ask that question again, and you'll see what the answer is going to be. Okay, who would like to read the second paragraph? Somebody else want to volunteer? No? You got Reese again? All right, Kathy's going to. All right, you'll be next, Kathy. All right, come on, Reese, do one more paragraph. And we'll Kathy. When the scholars.
When the scholars had entered, the student asked, "The evening prayer, is it voluntary or obligatory?" Rabban Gamliel said to the student, "Obligatory."
Right, in front of everybody, okay?
Rabban Gamliel said to the sages, "Is there anyone who disagrees with this?"
Now, he knows there's somebody who disagrees with it, right? He's basically saying, is there any pain and tuchis in there that disagrees with me? But he knows. It's provocative. Go ahead.
Rabbi Yehoshua said to him, "No."
What's happening there? He's lying. Why do you think he might be lying? He's scared. He's embarrassed. But keep going.
Rabban Gamliel replied, "But haven't other sages said in your name voluntary? Yehoshua, stand on your feet and they will testify against you."
Oh, bust. What's happening here? He's not taking it. Basically saying, I know you're lying. You've been saying voluntary behind my back, and now you're trying to play nice and say, I didn't say that, but I know people have, and I'm going to make you stand. We're all seated in semicircles, a famous picture you can see. We're going to make you stand up, and we're going to have all the 70 elders are going to stand around and tell you how you're wrong, basically. Gewalt, okay? This is not menschlichkeit, okay? This is not nice. All right, Kathy's going to carry on from here. Next stage, what's Rabbi Yehoshua going to deal with this? It's like scene 3, okay? How's he going to handle this dynamic?
Rabbi Yehoshua stood on his feet and said, "If I was alive and Rabban Gamliel was dead, in that case the living can contradict the dead. However, since we are both alive, how can the living contradict the living?"
Okay, what's he basically saying there? Wait, this is Rabbi Yehoshua talking here. He's the one getting dissed. He's standing up, and all those people are sitting. And he's getting ready to get attacked. He's saying, Henry?
He's saying, I don't want to make trouble for our leader.
There you go. We're both sitting alive with each other. If Rabbi Gamliel was deceased, then I'd be willing to contradict him publicly. But the bottom line is, I don't want to. I don't want to fight with you. Just let it go already. Do you follow? I don't want to be alive and have this live debate in front of you. I respect you enough to just let it go. But Rabban Gamliel won't let it go. Look what happens.
Rabban Gamliel sat and lectured, and Rabbi Yehoshua remained standing on his feet.
Itself a diss, okay, sitting and standing.
Until the people protested and said to Chutzpet the Turgamon, "Stand and stop translating."
All right, so this is a little bit of a background of how the Sanhedrin would work, is that people spoke multiple languages, and also you'd have sometimes a teaching in Hebrew and sometimes a teaching in Aramaic. And not everyone understood fully the Aramaic or in the Hebrew, etc. People had different levels of knowledge of both of the language. Aramaic was the colloquial language, so basically everyone knew that, but Hebrew depended, So there was actually someone's job was to translate, not only translate to make sure everyone understood, but also to speak loudly, because it's 70 people in a room. They don't have a microphone system. So this person's job is to speak up and kind of sit next to Rabban Gamliel and talk. But if he stands up, basically he's saying, I'm not going to do my job anymore. And he's going to piss off Rabban Gamliel too. Are we following here so far? So the students all around say, hey, chutzpah, stand up. And he decides to do so. Go ahead, the stage is set.
And he stood. The sages said, "How long will Rabban Gamliel continue to persecute Rabbi Yehoshua? Let's depose him."
They say, that's it. He is persecuting him. He's attacking him. He's making fun of him. He's gone. Now, next thing. What the big problem is, it's easy to fire somebody. What's the problem when you fire someone? Who's going to be the... It's like you know who's bad here. Sometimes you know what's that line? You know what's bad is better than what you don't know what's bad?
The devil you know.
The devil you know, is Rabbi J. The devil you know or the devil you don't know. This is like very appropriate for politics, okay? You want to get rid of somebody, but you think, well, who's going to replace them? Could be even worse. Okay, so who are they going to appoint? Go ahead, Kathy.
Who will appoint as Rabban Gamliel's replacement? Rabbi Yehoshua? No, he is directly involved in the affair.
Right. You can't do the person who had the big fight with him. That's not going to be good. Okay, keep going.
Rabbi Akiva? Perhaps he is vulnerable to retaliation from Rabban Gamliel as he lacks ancestral merit.
What does that mean, Rabbi Akiva? Who knows anything background of Rabbi Akiva? When did Rabbi Akiva start to even study Torah?
He was like 40.
When he was 40 years old. He was a poor farmer. He didn't know babkes of any of that. So he's like, not good. We need somebody with some yichus, some connections, okay, some who can stand up a little bit. Okay, go ahead.
Let us appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, since he is wise, wealthy, and a 10th generation descendant from Ezra.
One of the great prophets.
He is wise. If they question him, he will be able to answer them. He is wealthy. If the Roman government needs to be bribed,
You can pay him off.
he can bribe them. He is a 10th generation descendant from Ezra. He has ancestral merit, and Rabban Gamliel will not be able to punish him.
It's like, I just want to say, like, it's such a, like, I'm not getting to politics too much today, but of all the Democratic candidates, these are the kind of questions that sometimes are asked. It's not that who's necessarily the best leader and the best ideas. It's, who's going to win, basically. Like, who's going to be able to, when things get tough, who's going to be able to win the argument and win the day and convince the most people and push them? It's based not necessarily on the qualities of whether they're a good speaker or even if they're intellectually bright. It's like based on other qualities as well, okay? All right, Kathy, go on the next side here.
We've got one more paragraph at the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. Gavakasha.
That's the long paragraph.
At the long of page 1? On page 2? Oh, basement. Oh, okay, mine's on page 2. Go ahead, Vakasha. Go ahead. The sages.
Does anybody else want to read? I mean, I have.
Oh, someone else to read. Yeah, Vakasha, I just want to read. Last two. Greta's want to do it. All right. Sorry. Pilar, Vakasha. The sages.
The sages went to Rabbi Eliezer ben Zara and said to him,
They basically said, will you do
said
it?
to him, would the gentleman find it acceptable to become the head of the Sanhedrin? Rabbi Eliezer ben Zara said to the sages, allow me to go and consult my household.
Yeah, guess who his household is? Exactly. It's not just me taking this big job. It's going to affect my... Okay. Okay. A very profound point. Let me check, make sure I'm not getting this... Okay.
So Rabbi Eliezer ben Zara went and asked his wife. She said to Rabbi Eliezer ben Zara, perhaps they will depose you.
Yeah, like she's basically saying what? They chopped off the head of this guy. You're next. So, have some sechel. Are you sure you want this job? What does he say?
Rabbi Eliezer ben Zara said, it is better for a man to use a fine cup for one day, even if it breaks the next day.
Okay, she's basically saying, I'll take it for even one day. All right.
She said to Rabbi Eliezer ben Azara, you have no gray hair.
What's the problem with no gray hair? You're too young. They're not going to respect you. Okay, go ahead.
One day, he was 18 years old. On that day, he was 18 years old. A miracle happened, and 18 of his hairs turned gray. That is why Rabbi Eliezer ben Azara said, I am like a man of 70 years.
And not a man of 70 years. Does this ring a bell for anyone from Passover? In the Haggadah, there's a line that talks about Elazar. He was like a man that was like 7 years old. Next time you read Haggadah, don't skip through it too quickly. This line is included in there, and it's confusion. What does this have to do? He says, I'm not really 7 years old, but I pretend I faked it because I had all this gray hair. And they're saying the reason this all happened is because basically people wouldn't respect people that didn't have gray hair. Not to mention male, okay? But not especially gray hair. And he basically, God gave it as a gift so people would respect him. Okay, it's a side comment. On that day,
they removed the bouncer from the entrance and permitted the students to enter. Rabbi Gamaliel, during his tenure, had declared, any student whose inside is not like his outside shall not enter the study hall. On that day, they added many benches. Some say 400 and some say 700.
All right, this is from Shavuot. So what's going on here? So first of all, we said Rabban Gamliel is not a nice leader, and he embarrasses Yoshua publicly, and he won't take it back, but then they depose him. But what other differences did Rabban Gamliel have? What was his philosophy on education based on what you read here? The day he's gone, what? He's very strict who he took. He only wanted certain types of students who had a lot of integrity, and inside was like their outside. But they're having a tension about this, because what's the tension? What does it mean if you add 700 seats inside of his classroom? Exactly. Not everybody can get into UNC, you guys. I'm sorry. It's the bottom line. There's a limited number of freshman students who are going to get in there. We only want the best students possibly, who's inside like they're outside, who are super smart, But at some point, what about the other ones that want to study and learn? And by the way, isn't this Torah study? Don't you want Torah study to go out? Rabban Gamliel was very strict on his standards of who he wanted in his classroom. But on the other hand, it could be seen as kind of elitist. The day he's gone, they don't wait more than 1 second. You can imagine, there's like hundreds of students. 700 benches means each bench probably sat 10 people. So 4,000 to 7,000 students were desiring to study Torah, but he basically said to him, And how did he give him the hand? He put a bouncer at the front door. Think about it. Where do we put bouncers today? It's like he realized people were dying to study Torah, which we generally see as a very high quality. Rabban Gamliel was like, I don't care. Let him eat cake. People were that anxious. The day he leaves, not only they feel he got rid of a guy who was mean, okay, but they changed philosophies on education the day he leaves. Now the question is, what's Rabban Gamliel going to do then? And this is what I want to focus on at the end here. Who's reading it? Greta?
So maybe he was packing the place with people that only agreed.
Okay, right. He's getting people he likes. He's saying agreed with him. I mean, it could be people he thinks also are of a certain quality, even if disagreed, or at least of my, right, it's a question, okay?
Rabban Gamliel became demoralized. He said, perhaps, God forbid, I withheld Torah from Israel.
He's realizing maybe he was too strict, okay?
They showed him in a dream of white barrels filled with ashes.
I mean, it's kind of like God or some kind of angels, okay?
It was not a reliable dream, but was shown to him only to reassure him that the students were not worthy. They were empty barrels.
Which is basically saying, it's not that these students were bad, it's just that God gave them a dream almost like out of compassion. Like he's saying, like, relax. They're not necessarily all going to be great students. But again, the way it's pertained to Talmud is they may be great students. It's just that they're trying to calm him down. Because Rabban Gamliel, they don't want to make him seem like a completely bad guy. Like you'll see. Keep on going.
Ediot was taught on
which
that
is a section of the Talmud.
Was taught on that day, and every place that we say on that day, it is this day which is referred to. There was not a single halakha that depended upon the Beit HaMidrash.
Discussion amongst the scholars.
That was not clarified. Even Rabban Gamliel did not remove himself from the Beit HaMikdash for even a single hour, meaning he did not create a new Beit HaMikdash.
Okay. There's so much here. I just want to make sure I understand the last paragraph. What is Rabban Gamliel? He's been totally dissed by his students, deposed. He's got now Elazar and Zariah. The first thing they do is they go and open up to everyone, which was a slam to his policies, complete slam. And then in addition, they're now covering there's clearly a discussion that day. The day that it starts, they're discussing like lots and lots of halachic discussions that it's implied we're also waiting for this moment. Like somehow he was not focusing on this section, and all of a sudden, like on the day that he's gone, they all come up. It implies that like there were a lot of different legal questions that the rabbis wanted to talk about, but they held him off because Rabban Gamliel was like the Mitch McConnell of his day, right? You know the Mitch McConnell's issue? He decides what issues get to be discussed, or who's the one I say, Berger? That's a Hudas guy. Someone holds a discussion and decides what even gets discussed, right? So when he's gone, they bring up all the issues they've been just dying to talk about for years, come up. And what does Rabban Gamliel do? Does he run home and go to the local bar and have a couple beers? Does he go home to his wife and cry in her arms? Does he run away to another city? He sits in that Beit Midrash and doesn't miss one iota of the discussion. Okay, there are a million messages here. I'm sensitive to time. What messages do you pull out of this? There's not just one that you think are meaningful. Why is this in the Talmud? What are the rabbis trying to teach us? I want to focus on this end piece, that he didn't leave even after he got dissed. I think that's really interesting point and powerful point about leadership. But other points. What touches you about their leadership? Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Yoshua, the sages. Why do so many of our teachers think this is probably the top Talmudic story that we should study? Go ahead, Henry.
Earlier in the paragraph, I'm going to draw a parallel with today's politics.
It's very easy to do so.
Where many of us ask for more transparency. And I think that opening the discussion of the Torah to more people is a religious example of transparency.
Yefeh, I think you're right. More people can see the discussions going on. Yefeh, not to mention participate. I like that. Yefeh, transparency. Other thoughts here? Mike.
Well, it's more than transparency. It's also the discussion of like who gets to go to college these days.
Exactly.
The costs, the difference
barriers
between rich and poor having the opportunities. It's just like you hear in the news every night. It's amazing how related to contemporary activities it is.
Absolutely. About restricting learning or expanding learning. Yefeh, please.
You can equate this to the separation of powers issue that is taking place today in this country. It's the executive branch versus the congressional branch, the legislative branch, in terms of who has the power, who has decisions on declaring war, who has decisions on different aspects of openness and transparency.
I see. So you almost see like, Rabban Gamliel on some levels playing the executive role and holding power, and the Congress is the stage saying, hey, you can't make all the, we actually can bring you down. We can, quote unquote, impeach you, I guess. That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, Vakasha, please. Yeah.
I also think that it says that a good leader could admit when they're wrong. Because, God forbid I withheld Torah from Israel.
Exactly.
And then he stayed. So that it's admitting that he's wrong and still participating.
I think that's profound. He realizes that, oh my God, maybe I made a mistake, but he doesn't run away. He can accept that problem. I think it's a very profound point. Yafeh. Other thoughts here?
Yeah, it reminded me of Plato's Cave, where the idea is that who can know? Some people are not really capable of knowing or learning, so we just need to keep them in the dark. There's only some of us that can really be enlightened and know. So I think it reminded me of that as a metaphor.
Yes, Yefeh. So Deborah over here. Anybody else? Okay, she's making a turn. A sivuv around this side. We're not discriminating against this side. All right.
I think that one of the most profound things in this is that Rabbi Gamliel does not go and form his own Beit HaMikdash. That whether you win, so to speak, or you lose, you have an obligation to stay in the fight. So whatever may happen, your obligation, Rabbi Gamliel is saying, I'm going to stay, I'm going to argue halakha, I'm going to work with my peers because this is my community. And instead of going off in a huff and forming my own community in opposition to this one, I'm going to stay in this one. I'm going to continue to do the work. Sometimes I'll win, sometimes I'll lose, but I have an obligation to my community regardless.
I think it's a very profound. And just think about what level of social embarrassment he had to take to do that, right? He was like the king, and now he's got to be like everybody else. It's hard, but he made that decision. He did. It's actually so much to be self-sacrificial. Other Risa?
Yeah, exactly what Deborah said, but for me, I take these things personally, and I don't think it's just politics. I think any situation where people are involved is political. Right. So just to survive with other people around you, you have to learn how to stay in the game.
Other thoughts here in the back? Yeah. Okay, we'll go back.
I think it's also admitting that the teacher can learn from the students, and everybody has an opinion and a voice, and listen to them all, and then make a decision. But just one person shouldn't be the dictator.
Yefeh. Very nice. Linda can. Let's see, Mike.
And it might take me a minute just to go through what I'm seeing, but there's a lot of stuff in here about qualifications for leadership. So, you've got Rabban Gamliel, and he's larger than life. He's sort of really powerful at this point. And then, he gets challenged. He's getting challenged. And then there's a whole big discussion about, okay, well, we want to get rid of him, but who do we replace him with? And what we find is, okay, Yehoshua,
he has a conflict of interest, so we can't put him in
Conflict of interest,
place.
exactly.
And then we look at Rabbi Akiva, and he has not had enough experience, right? So he can't do it.
That's right.
And then they're looking at this other guy, Eleazar ben Azariah, and he's rich. Now that might be good, right? We want a wealthy person, and we want somebody with connections, which they
correct.
say he has connections. And the other guy, him as well, he's not old enough, right? So these are all the kinds of things we're looking for in leaders, and some of them are petty, some of them are, not what truly makes a qualified leader, but, we are seeing this today, of course,
we
right?
are seeing this today. That's, I think, is so important. Exactly, about who we're choosing to lead us. All right, I'll give Mike the last one, then I'm going to wrap up here. It's been a great conversation on a great text. You can maybe keep it up going on Kiddush. Who? Mike's behind. Oh, you also, yeah. Mike, also, I'm sorry. Yeah, all right, last one we'll give it to Marvin.
One bit of puzzlement and then a comment. The puzzlement to me is,
Yeah.
why do these elite students need a translator? You said that they weren't experts in Hebrew and Aramaic. These are the elite of the elite of the elite. They would know Hebrew and Aramaic by the time they're studying. I'm surprised by that. But the more general comment is, we're reading this as a very inclusive statement.
Yes.
If this is a statement of inclusivity, it's the only one I've ever heard of in the Talmud. But the Talmud generally does not encourage. I mean, generally there's an awful lot about the Amharites in there. I mean, they generally, so I wonder if we're seeing this through a lens that isn't seeing the way that it was written, because it generally is, it does not believe, I mean, the rabbis are generally not kind to everyone has an opinion, right? But the Talmud can be pretty unhappy with people that express invalid opinions. So I think we're reading it as a little more inclusive than anything else I've ever certainly read in Talmud. I haven't read a lot of Talmud, so who knows? But every other story I've read in the Talmud, there's a conflict between an elite rabbi and anyone else. The elite rabbi is always right. I mean, it seems like that's one of the...
So I think Mike's point. I need to look up the whole issue of chutzpah. I'm also a little. I have the same puzzlement. I just want to say the Turgoman's role is also speak loudly. So it may not just be translator. Maybe more like what do you projector, something like that. But I need to look at that too. I want to say, like, Mike's a good point here. Nobody's saying here that like everybody's right and like anything right. I think everyone's right. There's going to be winners and losers and it's like that. But what's inclusive in the sense that within this, like, so for example, there are people that are disappointed with something in our country. Some people say, well, that's it, I'm moving to Canada. Or that's it, I'm making Aliyah, right? Rabban Gamliel could have said, I'm making Aliyah, or I'm joking, it's not the right example. He said, he lived in Israel, I'm going to move to Canada. But he didn't. He said, even though I was publicly down and could be fairly embarrassed, and I lost or losing some, I'm going to stay in this Beit Midrash, at least for now. There's actually more to the story after this. This is kind of, but so it's Mike's right. It's not like it's like super inclusivity. Every single person gets a voice. It's not true. There's some elitism, as noted before. But he hung in, saying there's different competing ideas, and he decided to stick in with it, even was going to go against him. It's a moment of some inclusivity. I think you're right. We shouldn't generalize about all inclusivity. That's a fair point. All right, Marvin, last one. All right, we're coming. Last one's guy. All right, Gewalt.
The best thing about it is, though, that it was given to a young person. This is what we need. This is the future.
Right. I mean, that's right. I mean, some people say a young person also has no history, right? What's the problem with people running for office today? Is that they've served too long. They have too many statements that people can make fun of. All right, Kathy, like no one knows enough about him yet. That's one of the issues.
So we've spent all this time talking about Rabbi Gamliel, but I think Rabbi Elazar needs some credit for the way that he handled the transfer of leadership.
Yeah.
Because not only did he go in and then open up, the Beit Midrash, but that very first day he made sure to set the expectation, right? Mm-hmm. And because I mean, this decision of all these, all this halacha, is acknowledging the fact that this whole thing with Rabbi Gamliel came down to a machloket about Mariv. Like, so he set the stage. He's saying, this is a new day. This is a new set of leadership, and this is where I want us all to be on the same page so that we can move forward.
Yefeh. And he basically, it was like there was a whole clog of discussions people wanted to have that it was being stopped. He said, I'm going to let it go forward. But I also say, the Talmud does not share its terse language. The whole thing where he had to go with his wife and had to talk to her basically means he wasn't sure. He didn't know if this is a good decision. How true is that? Remember when President Obama was asked, want to be president, and then but Michelle Obama was very ambivalent about this. I don't know if you remember. Yeah, she's written about it in her book. It's very powerful. You're not just bringing yourself. You have your family. It's going to change your life. It's an honor, but it's like a total burden. And are you ready for that at 18? Right? Are you ready? And you're going to make change, and that will upset people too. And maybe you become Rabban Gamliel. Maybe they're going to oppose you next. That's the reality. Is anyone's going to lead. It could be you coming next. Don't be so thinking you're going to sneak through. It's happened before. Okay, you're fit. All right, last one's give us a Marv. Marvin's going to be very patiently. Then we're going to wrap it up here. All right, May, then last. Okay, Gavat. We have lunch waiting. Kiddush is waiting. All right.
Well, it also says that everything is open for discussion. You can revisit issues, and if I understood that on that day is this day, that means on every day there's the potential to raise an issue that may have seemed to be closed before, and that goes well beyond what we've been talking about, because that sounds maybe very revolutionary that now everything has opened up again for discussion.
I think this is true what you're saying. The on that day means that in the other parts of the Talmud, they'll say on that day there was this discovery, and they'll say it's just a very random place. Every time it says on that day, it means the day that he started, that first day. That's what we're referring to, which means that hundreds of discussions arose on the first day that Gamliel was deposed. Means that they were all aching to bring him out. But in the second, on deeper level, you're right. It meant that there was so much up for discussion that was being held back. And shouldn't we then, therefore, let more discussions take place? Is kind of the broader question. All right. Out of respect to May, we'll give May last one. Thank you so much. May, so people can hear you, May. They can't hear you at the mic. Bakasha.
If you want something to survive, everybody has to take part in it. And if they wanted Israel to survive, if we want our country to survive today, we all need to be involved, and we all have to listen to each other. And if you all sit back in your chairs someplace and not do anything, we will not survive.
Amen. 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 So I'm not going to even extend this too much longer. I say this is a tremendous conversation. It really is about leadership, about Jewish community, about sticking in there, about what does it mean to set in, how does one person go down, another person go up, how do you honor your history, who are the leaders and who becomes a leader, various things. But also important, I think, piece here is just about honoring people that even they lose, can you lose gracefully? Can you lose in a way that you're willing to stay in the game and stay in the conversation? That is part of leadership too. All right, you're fit. Kol hakavod. Pass the text over. This will be Talmud summer here at Beth Meyer. You got into it. Shkoyach. We're going to invite Rabbi Jenny to come forward to lead us in the Musaf. We rise together. Chatzi Kaddish 184.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, יעמד יפרח ירצה וימליך מלכותי בחייך וביומך ובחייך בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך להעלם עולם והמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתבר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי קודשא בריחו לילה מן כה ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן מעמה ויאמרו Amen.
Cover your feet together. 185 through 187 together. Rest is done silently.
Adonai Sifatai Tiftachu Fia Ki Teilatecha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotinu V'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Ve'Elohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו ויאהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה, אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור דלם אדוני, מחיי מתים מטרף להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נובים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים באמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נעריצך ונקדישך כסוד שיח שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, כך כתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ, כבודו כבודו מלא מלא עולם מלא עולם, כבודו כבודו מלא מלא עולם מלא עולם, כבודו כבודו מלא מלא עולם. משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, האם מקום כבודו. משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, האם מקום כבודו. לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, הוא ייתן ברחמים ביחונם, המייחדים שמו ערב בבוקר, בכל יום תמיד פעמיים מאהבה, שמע אומרים שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו, שנהנה כל חי. להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד קודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדישתך נקדיש, ושפחך אלוהינו מפינו ישלם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. אמן.
Page 203.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, ועמד דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון ומכון, ובחי את כל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב והימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעולם מהמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי לקודשה, בריחו, לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן ועלמה והימרו, אמן. תתקבל צלותו ובאותו נכו ישראל, קדם אבון דבשמי והימרו, אמן. יהי שלום הרב בן שמעיה, וחיים אלינו בכל ישראל והימרו, אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, והימרו, אמן. אין כאלוהינו, אין כאדוננו, אין כמלכנו, אין כמושיענו, non como vuestro Dios, non como vuestro Señor, non como vuestro Rey, non como vuestro Salvador. מיכאל אלוהינו, מיכה אדוננו, מיכה מלכנו, מיכה משיענו, quien como vuestro Dios, quien como vuestro Señor, quien como vuestro Rey, quien como vuestro Salvador. No del Eloheinu, no del Adonenu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu, lo haremos nuestro Dios, lo haremos nuestro Señor, lo haremos nuestro Rey, lo haremos nuestro Salvador. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, bendicho nuestro Dios, bendicho nuestro Señor, bendicho nuestro Rey, bendicho nuestro Salvador. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, tú eres nuestro Dios, tú eres nuestro Señor. Tú eres nuestro Rey, tú eres nuestro Salvador. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. והיה אדוני למלך כל הארץ, ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו 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 אחד.
May be seated. Invite those in mourning or observing a yard site this Shabbat to rise for Kadisha Tome, page 207. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
בעלמא דברך ירותי ואמליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון חיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה וזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן.
אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי.
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה.
בריחו.
Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran bi'alma v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'yimroma. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'yimru. Amen. Shabbat shalom, and be seated. Invite Jasmine Meadow from the Board of Trustees to offer announcements.
I apologize for the noise, actually.
Oh, no, it's
A
so
little bit.
cute.
We welcome it.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
This is my first time doing this, but I'm Jasmine Medoff, and I'm a new member of the Board of Trustees. So I have some announcements. We have more in the lobby on the Shabbat bulletin, but a few items to highlight. Everyone is invited to participate in purchasing the conservative movement's new high holiday machzorim. Our goal is to have 700 additional new machzorim by the fall of 2020. Forms are in the lobby or order online. The summer book club is ongoing. The Social Action Committee is sponsoring a letter writing event on June 30th. And I think there was more information on that in the Hamagid too, if you have questions. Okay. For those of you who may not know, Beth Meyer has 2 weekly minyan services, Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. and Sunday morning at 9, as well as weekly Kabbalat services Friday at 8. And my understanding is we just need you to show up. So if you can be there, please be there. A friendly reminder is it is Beth Meyer's custom to avoid the use of electronics, including cell phones, cameras, and tablets anywhere on the campus during Shabbat. Thank you, everyone who came for services today, including everyone who read Torah. Before you go, kindly put, oh, bless you. Kindly put your siddur and chumash in their original spot, and please put the bulletins and other paper in the lobby as you leave. Once we conclude our service, children and adults can remain in the social hall or lobby, and I think there's Nosh for Kiddush. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Shakar. Way to go. Jasmine. Any announcements? Vakasha. Saul. Thank you. Bob, yes.
I just want to call your attention to the 72nd Institute of Judaism, August 12th to 15th. It's held at a beautiful location called Wild Acres, right off the Blue Ridge Parkway near Little Switzerland. It's an opportunity to learn, to eat, to nosh, to create friends, be entertained, and just to really enjoy this opportunity. There's a brochure looks like this. It's in the lobby. If anyone has any questions, please see Shirley or me during Kiddush, after Kiddush, or whatever. But hopefully you can make your plans and join us for that very, very special time.
Awesome. All right, Deborah.
Because I really worked hard with this, and on it has some links that you can go and get further information. So I hope that it's between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock next Sunday, so you don't have to rush, but if you have to be here for meeting anyway, stay, for bagel, write postcard. And it's just drop in, so come when you can. Don't feel like you have to come at any particular time. We'll be here until 2 o'clock. But I think this is a really important issue, and I hope that people will come out and urge our congresspeople to vote on these issues.
Awesome, Deborah.
Thanks, Deborah.
All right, Sari Rose, Vakasha.
To bring food and spend time with your family
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Our tradition is also to invite people who are new or new-ish to rise, and we get to embarrass you and know who you are and where you're from and stuff like that. So I see a couple faces that are new. Will you rise and tell us who you guys are and where you're coming from? So.
Good morning. My name is Michael Blacksburg. This is my wife Nicole. We've got our boy Sam, who's about 9 and a half, and twins and girls Esme and Margot, who just turned 5.
Wonderful.
We've actually been in town for 2 years this month. We moved here from Marin, San Francisco, and settled into Durham, and just kind of not getting out.
Great.
Awesome.
We're,
Great to see
we're so glad to have you here.
Awesome. Yes, Yvette. Yeah.
Wonderful. Welcome, Yvette.
May it only continue. Awesome, awesome. Sir, you in the back there? Yes. Oh, wow. Wonderful. Glad to be here. Wonderful. We got some students here as well. Yes? Awesome. Fantastic. Glad to have you with us. Fantastic. All right. Anybody else from Missing who's here? Newish? You? It's Cutie. There's no baby in town.
Benny's a new member.
All right. We love that. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. Awesome. All right. So.
All right. Adon page 211. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem bo yetzir nivra leheit nasav v'chatza kol hazai melech shemo nikra hazai melech shemo nikra v'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora Vehu aya, vehu ove, vehu yeh betifara, vehu yeh betifara, vehu echad ve'en sheni, lehamshir lo lehachvira, veli reishi, veli tachlit, velo ha'oz ve'ha'misra, velo V'hamisra Vehu Eili V'chai Goari V'tzur Chevli B'tzara Vehu Nisi U'manosi V'nakosi V'yom Ekra V'nakosi V'yom Ekra Ve'ado Avkid Ruchi Ve'heiti Shan Ve'ayira Ve'iruchi Geviati Adonai li Ve'lo ira Adonai li Ve'lo ira.
Before we make Motzi and Kiddush, one last thing. We have a unique request. Rabbi Jen Feldman was a rabbi of the Kehila Shul in Chapel Hill and a good friend of mine and ours in our community. She is leading an unveiling for a family. It's somewhat complex, the dynamics, but it's 10:30 a.m. tomorrow morning at the Raleigh Hebrew Cemetery, and they're concerned about getting a minyan to be there in order to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. So she's called upon me and on the Reform Temple as well, us, to see if some people would be willing to go down. If you're able to do it, you just go down there at 10:30 tomorrow morning at the Raleigh Hebrew Cemetery on State Street and just show up. It probably is only about a 15-20 minute amount of your time. It will be a big mitzvah for the family. So any questions you have about it, you can ask me, and I can give you perhaps a little more information, but that's the basic. Tomorrow, 10:30 in the morning. Oopa, wrong one. Okay, Baruch Adonai, Yom HaShav Yikadsheu, Savri, Ochat Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Vragaver. Multitasking, man, you know, bad. Dying. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. B'ktevan, Shoshoho, b'kasha.